All right, I want to go over just a real quick review of what we covered on Monday, I believe it was. Hopefully some of this is starting to get in there and starting to get to you and stick to you a little bit. But we talked about working process, and the main thing we talked about on Monday, trying to speak a little loudly so the camera will pick it up. And my mother tells me I'm mumble anyway, so I need to speak louder. But we talked mostly about overhead. I think we have a good idea of what direct labor is and direct materials, but then the overhead is what's going to give us trouble. But it's nothing we cannot handle. We can handle this and do well. Preach it, brother, right? We can do very well with this. So there are a lot of there's about 3 or 4 different ways to apply manufacturing overhead. But let me remind you, you got a big overhead bucket. And if it has anything to do with manufacturing and it's not direct materials and direct labor, we're going to throw it in that big bucket. And that's going to be the factory, security, the cleanup folks, the manager's salary, the training people maybe, might be a quality control manager. Anything that you can't trace directly to the product is going to be thrown in that bucket. So at the beginning of the year, we stop and say, okay, the year's coming. What is our manufacturing overhead going to be? We don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we can estimate it, right? Because we're pretty smart people. We've done this before. We've been here for a while. We know how much the electricity bill is probably going to be. We know the property taxes. We know the depreciation. We know how much security is going to cost us. We know all that stuff. But it's not going to be exact. It's not going to be perfect. So we come up with an amount, and then we're going to figure out a way to apply it. And the main reason we do this is because we don't want to wait till the end of the year and then apply the overhead. At the end of the year, we'll know exactly what it cost us, right? Exactly. Because we can look back and look at our invoices and look at our checks, and we'll know exactly what it cost us. But if we're creating something in January and February, we don't want to wait till the end of the year to know what it cost us. So we're not only going to know the direct labor for each job, we're going to know the direct materials, direct labor, and we're going to estimate the overhead. And it won't be perfect, but it's better to make a decision with some information than no information. And one of the main reasons we want to do this is because if we have new jobs that come up that are like our old jobs, we can look back at the old jobs and base that. We can base our new bids on our old costs. Now, it won't be perfect, but it's a good place to start. So we don't want to wait till the end of the year to figure out what it cost us to make a swing set or a pair of tennis shoes or to put on a sports camp. Whatever it might be, we need to have that cost so when we go forward, we can use that information to make some money or not go broke and to be good stewards with what God has given us, because management accounting is so very important, and this is cost accounting. So I think this is where, remind me, is this where we stopped the other day, Wed March?
Yes.
I think we stopped here the other day, so help me along here. We'll answer a few more of these multiple choice. Which of the following allocation basis has traditionally been used to allocate cost? And you know the answer to that immediately, right? What is it? You think it's all of them? Direct labor, machine hours, direct labor cost. So it's going to be all of those. So what we're trying to do with this crazy stuff, we're trying to figure out a way to take that big bucket of overhead and trying to find a causation, a correlation. Because if we use a lot of direct labor to build those boats that we've been talking about, then we're probably going to use a lot of manufacturing overhead as well. And so maybe that's a good method. Maybe. We're trying to do the best we can. The general formula to allocate cost is, let's see, what looks good? Estimated overhead cost divided by cost pool. Well, that doesn't sound right. The cost pool. Now, the cost pool is basically just that. If this is our manufacturing facility right here, all of the costs that relate to this is our cost pool. That's not direct labor, direct materials. That's not direct labor, direct material. So our cost pool divided by estimated overhead cost, cost to be allocated divided by total occurrence of the allocation base. So basically, cost to be allocated divided by the total occurrence of the allocation base. That's it. Now that's kind of confusing, I know, but that's the answer to that. So we're going to take our total cost, our estimated cost, and if we're going to use direct labor hours, direct labor cost, or machine hours, that's our activity. That's our activity that we're going to use to allocate to each unit that we're going to create. So cost to be allocated divided by total occurrences of the allocation base. So these are our allocation bases. If you're not going to use all three of them at the same time, you choose one. And you choose that at the beginning of the year because you're coming up with your predetermined allocation base. Allocating manufacturing overhead is a two-stage process. The first stage is to identify a cost object, and the second stage is to well, that's not it. Let's see. Identify your cost object, and then allocate the overhead using an application rate. So the answer to that is C. So you gather your overhead into a cost pool. You allocate that using an application rate. So at the beginning of the year, we are going to estimate all of our manufacturing overhead. We're going to estimate, and we're going to divide that by either direct labor hours, direct labor cost, or machine hours. Now there are other bases, but this gives you the idea. That's enough information to make you dangerous. There are other ways to do this. There's also this thing called ABC. It's activity-based costing. And if you go to work somewhere that uses that, at least you'll know what it's about. You're allocating the overhead. So questions on those three?
What was number 2? C.
It wasn't on your phone? You didn't find it on your phone there?
Yeah, I guess.
All right, determine the cost of product.
What was it?
Okay, completed job. So what we're going to do here, again, anything that goes into work in process has to be allocated to a job cost sheet. Anything that goes into work in process has to be allocated to a job cost sheet. So we can keep up with the job, and then we can figure out our cost per unit. So we take our direct materials of $15,000, our direct labor, manufacturing overhead. So that's our total. Not too bad. Any questions on that? This is going to become in the problem that you have. It's going to tell you the direct materials. That's traced directly to the product. The direct labor is traced directly to the product. And then the manufacturing overhead is an estimate. So these two are true. These are exact. This is an estimate. This is an estimate that we're applying to that job. Now, at the end of the year, we actually have an account that we've been accumulating manufacturing overhead in. We've got the factory security, the factory property taxes. You've got the manager's salary that's overseeing all the manufacturing. You've got the utilities, all those kind of things. So basically those actual costs are going to be, I'm not going to use debits and credits, but it's in this account called manufacturing overhead. So all of those expenses, even though we're not expensing them on the balance sheet, all of these costs that are actual, we're writing checks for property taxes, we're depreciating the manufacturing equipment, we're paying the factory security guards, we're paying my salary to oversee the facilities, those kind of things. So all of those are being actually in the manufacturing overhead account for the year. But the amounts that we're taking out, and assigning to the jobs, that's an estimate, isn't it? That is an estimate. So at the end of the year, we've put in the actual, we've taken out an estimate. So the chances of that being 0 at the end of the year is pretty slim. It's possible, but it's not likely. Because we're putting in all the actuals, and the actuals, you know, we're good, but we're not perfect. So there's going to be an amount left in here. There's going to be an amount left in here. So if we take the amount that is applied, which is this is applied. The estimated is applied based on our predetermined overhead rate. Okay? That's our estimate. That's applied. If what we take out during the year, based on our predetermined estimate, is greater than what we actually had to pay, this is what we actually had to pay, this is what we took out. That means we took out too much. But hey, it was only an estimate, don't yell at me. That's over applied. So that's over applied. So basically, if you apply more than you actually take in that you have to pay, that's over applied. Now why do we care about this? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because if we over applied it, that means this job really didn't cost that much, right? If we applied too much overhead because it was an estimate, that means the cost of job one that we did back in January or February, you see, we're doing this at the end of the year. We're doing this at the end of the period, at the end of the year. So this job that we did back in January, we costed it out a little too much. Not a big deal probably, not a whole lot. But that means it was over applied, so it's really good news, isn't it? Because that job didn't cost us as much as we thought it did. So it's really kind of good news. Now the other scenario is the amount applied is less than the actual. Well, that's not such good news, is it? Because if we applied less than we had that we actually incurred, that means we didn't apply enough. It was under applied. And so that means these jobs cost us more than we thought. But usually it's not by a tremendous amount if we did our job properly. And we do have to adjust that, but we're not going to get into the adjustments. But because they're based on an estimate, we have to deal with that at the end of the year. We make some entries and all that good stuff. So, let's work on a couple problems here. For me. All right, let's just walk through this first one together. Remember, there's process costing and job order costing. Those are the only two I'm only responsible for. And process costing, we're not even going to get into that, but I want you to know what it is, what it's used for. We're going to just talk about job costing, because I believe that's the most useful to us. There are several products. For each item, indicate whether job order costing or process costing would be the preferred costing method. So think about what we learned this week. Remember, job order costing is any time you're going to do jobs that are different. Process costing is for something that's going to go through a bunch of different departments. It's all going to look the same at the very end. So take a minute and go through those, no pressure. Just answer it either job order costing or process costing. Everybody got answers for all of them? Let's start at the bottom. What's gasoline going to be?
Process.
Process costing, everybody agree with that? It's all gonna go through different departments, it's all gonna look the same when it gets out, isn't it? Now, you might have unleaded and leaded and premium and all that stuff, but they would all be the same as they got to the other end. Custom kitchen cabinets.
Job order.
Yeah, every kitchen that's built, there's a custom kitchen, somebody's gonna get out a job call sheet, and they're gonna keep up with them because they're all different. Different sizes, different wood, different everything. It's all gonna be different. We had this example the other day, advertising posters.
Job order.
Advertising posters, even though the 20,000 posters all look the same, that was a job that went through. And so we want to know what that job cost us in direct labor, direct materials, and any overhead that we would apply. Aspirin,
Metal dog food.
probably going to be a process. What do you think? I mean, the aspirins are going to go through 2 or 3 different departments, and they're going to do different things to them, but it's going to be process costing. Office buildings,
Job order.
yeah, all office buildings are going to be different, aren't they? You're going to take it. You're going to accumulate the materials and labor and overhead. Breakfast cereal,
Process.
yeah, they're all going to look about the same. We won't get into everybody's breakfast there. Yeah, oil tankers,
Job order.
yeah, don't mix up oil and tankers. I mean, this is the big ship that takes them. When you build one of those, you're talking about probably hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're going to be different. Each one of them are going to be different. Hairspray
Process.
and commercial jetliners.
Job order.
Probably going to be job. No, those are all those are things you're going to see on those types of things. Maybe not those exact things. Some of them might be on there, but good study tool for your test.
You missed dog food.
Which one?
Dog.
Dog food. What do you think?
Process.
Yeah, it's going to be processed. All right, let's look at 3-6. Get your calculators and your phones out. You all have to learn on the side here. Okay, the Jesse Lynn Company manufactures playground equipment. For 2004, budget manufacturing overhead is $240,000. Budget direct labor is $30,000 at a cost of $384,000, and budget machine is $12,500. Okay, so anytime you see the word budgeted, you're talking about the future, aren't you? You budget this for the incoming period, the next period basically. So we're standing here looking forward into the next year. So we budget manufacturing overhead for $240,000. That includes all of those things I've been yakking about that are not direct labor and direct material. Now we believe our direct labor will be 30,000 hours and it'll cost us $384,000, and our machine hours are $12,500. When production begins on January 1, 2004, would it be a good idea for managers to determine the cost of manufacturing overhead associated with each swing set produced, or should managers wait until you actually know? So you know that, right? We've been talking about that some, or at least I've been yakking about it. That if we wait till the end of the period to do that, we will not know the cost of the swing sets that we create in January, February, March, and so forth. So, would not be a good idea to wait, would it?
No.
You want to estimate it, so the next time you start building those same playground equipment, you'll have a good idea of what it cost you last time. So you might be able to lower the price or increase your price so you can stay in business basically. If we assume that managers need to know the manufacturing overhead costs associated with playground equipment as soon as the equipment is manufactured, would actual overhead costs be available? So let's say you build some in January. Do you know the actual manufacturing overhead yet?
No.
Everybody got
Yeah,
that?
guesstimate.
You're not going to know that till the end of the year, basically. So we would not have that information yet. Well, let's go down here where you have to do some work. But that's good rationale that you should know. If we assume managers need to know the overhead cost associated with the playground equipment as soon as the equipment is made, and it's too early in the year to have actual overhead information, what overhead cost information must be used? Well, you know that. That's what we've been talking about. We take our manufacturing overhead estimated, we divide by our allocation base, and we allocate it basically. And that's what we're going to do here. What would the overhead application rates be? Okay? So take a minute. If it's going to be direct labor hours, direct labor cost, or machine hours. Do you have the information here you need?
Yep.
You got the information here? So you can just wiggle it out there at the side. So if we're going to use direct labor hours, what would that be per hour? If we're going to use direct labor cost, what would that be per dollar? And what would the machine hours be? So take a minute and just divide those out. And think about what you're doing. No, there's an example. Well, that's the normal one. But it's still the same thing. You got the normal cost system. All you gotta do is take your manufacturing overhead, divide by direct labor hours, you get a number. Take manufacturing overhead, divide by direct labor cost, you get a number. Take manufacturing overhead, divide by machine hours, and you get a number. Make sure you can do this.
You get 8.625.
So take overhead, which is 240, divide by your budgeted labor hours, then divide this by this, then divide this by this. Right. I got it? Colin, you got it?
I have them all.
Got it.
Got it. All right, it's gonna be on, what you're gonna have to do on the test. Let's see it. So, 240 divided by 30,000 hours, what do you get, Colin?
You get 8.
12.
Any questions on that?
Basically 24 divided by 3.
So what does that mean? I know you can divide. But that means that we've got this big manufacturing overhead bucket, and that every hour that we spend on a piece of playground equipment, we're saying that direct labor is a good causation or correlation for our manufacturing overhead. So we're going to take $8 out, and we're going to take it over and apply it to that job. Now, does that mean that's exactly what the manufacturing overhead is? This is only an estimate, isn't it? It's only an estimate. So that would be one allocation basis. All right, the other one that you might use is direct labor cost. Now, this is one that gives us fits. This is the one that gives us problems because sometimes the direct labor cost is more than the manufacturing overhead. But don't let that throw you. Don't worry about that. So what's 240,000 divided by 384?
0.625.
What is it?
0.625.
0.625. Okay. So that means that for every dollar of direct labor, not hours, but labor. So every dollar of direct labor, we're going to take 62.5 cents. Everybody see that? We're going to take 62.5 cents we're going to take it out and we're going to apply it to a particular job. So for every dollar, not hours, but dollars. That's one way to allocate it. Questions on that? Okay, the other method that we might use to allocate manufacturing overhead is 240,000 divided by machine hours. So this is a good one to use if you have a lot of machinery and you might not have a lot of manufacturing overhead because you got a lot of equipment, you've got a lot of robotics, and people are standing behind the screen adjusting the buttons and doing all kinds of stuff, making sure the equipment's running properly and all that good stuff. But if we use machine hours, what's 240 divided by 12.5?
19.2.
What is it?
19.2.
Is that right? Is that what we got? So that means that for every hour that we're using a piece of machinery, we're going to take 19.2, $19.20, and we're going to take it out of that bucket and we're going to apply it to a job because we think that that's a good allocation base for the manufacturing overhead. It's not perfect. Not perfect by any stretch, but we don't want to wait till the end of the year, do we? We don't want to wait till the end of the year. We could, but it's better to do it this way. And if you were asked to help select an allocation base for Jesse, which three would be used? What would you recommend? Not going to worry about that right now. We're just trying to get into the basics here, to the basics.
I recommend
Okay. All right, y'all have a good time.
Go get 'em, team.
Go team.
Go get 'em, guys.
Slide in head first. Don't hurt anybody. You're a dangerous man. So, all right, let's look at the next one here. We're going to get this. When we take this test, everybody's going to get an A+.
Yeah, we are.
Griswold. Griswold Company allocates manufacturing overhead and production based on direct labor hours. Okay, Griswold. That's
Clark Griswold.
yeah, that's one of the Chevy Chase units. Yeah. Allocates manufacturing overhead and production based on direct labor hours. Okay. Compute the overhead application rate. Can you do that? Are we going to use the estimate or the actual? Which one do we know at the beginning of the year?
Yes. At the beginning of the year, you know the estimate.
Yeah, we don't know. When we're doing this, we don't know this, do we?
Nope.
Everybody got that? You don't know this. So you're going to use this, and do you know the actual direct labor hours?
No.
So you're going to use this. So take 403.2 and divide by 21,000.
$19.2.
19.2 again?
Yeah,
That's a
wow.
popular number, isn't it?
They're the only one that came back.
So 403.2, remember we're doing this at the beginning of the year. We're going to divide it by 21,000. Is Colin right?
I'm always right.
Yes.
All right, 19.20 per hour. So that's what we start the year with. Now as we go through the year, we are creating something that Griswold creates. Whatever it is, tennis shoes maybe. Okay. So we are going to take, how are we going to apply it? Are we going to apply it using estimated or actual?
Actual.
Beautiful. So we're going to take our 20,000 hours times 1920, and what do we get?
384,000.
What is it?
384,000.
284?
No, 384.
384? Thank you. Not hearing it.
That's $19.20. So then you take 20.
Why did we use the actual?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But everybody got that 384?
That's not right.
Can I ask, why do we use the actual one here again?
Good question.
Good question, but
I'll go.
we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I know you know. He right.
Okay, the question is, why do we use the actual to apply an estimate? Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we look forward, we estimate our manufacturing overhead, we come up with a predetermined amount, right? But now during the year, as we're working on our tennis shoes or whatever, chairs or whatever, we want to apply that based on how many actual hours we work. We know that as we work on it, don't we? Because we know the direct labor. And at the beginning of the year, we decided that was a good causation of our overhead. It's not perfect. So we use the actual hours during the year to apply the estimate. We use the actual hours during the year to apply the estimate during the year. So at the end of the year, here's our manufacturing overhead. And during the year, is this the applied or actual?
Actual. No,
Think about it.
applied.
This was an estimate, wasn't it?
So then you subtract that from the actual, right?
So this is what we're going to take out $384,000. Where does that go?
Cost of goods sold.
Well, before it goes to cost of goods sold, it's got a pit stop. It goes through work in process, right?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute, I got a hole over here. How much was my actual?
378.
So during the year, now remember, these are summary numbers. You would be doing this all throughout the year. If you worked on a product 100 hours, if you worked on a job for 100 hours, it'd be 100 times 1920 applied. So this is just the end of the year summary numbers. But picture it happening all during the year. All during the year it would be happening. So if we applied 384, and that's pretty good, isn't it? Hey, you only missed it by $6,000. That's not bad. But we applied 384, and the actual was 378. So is that over or under applied?
Over.
Yeah, you over applied, didn't you? Which is kind of good news, because that means it didn't cost as much as we thought it would. Kind of good news. So good, you're getting it. So that's over applied a little bit. Now that I'm not going to work this. Anyway, I like what we did better than that. All right, I'm going to skip 9. I expect you to do that for homework for Monday, for Wednesday, Friday. So put homework beside that.
36.
And also do homework number 11, but we're going to go over 12.